Jesus, that's our prayer this morning, that we would meet you. As we just even say that we're here for you, Father, would you open our hearts and minds to you this morning? You know where each of us are at. You meet us on each of the roads we travel on. And we just ask this morning, Father, as we are here, would you meet us in this place? Literally in this room right now, just in unity, but also in those depths of our hearts that maybe at times we knowingly or unknowingly don't let you into. Would you give us the courage this morning to just open our hearts to you, to learn to trust you, to learn to follow you. So as we look to your scripture this morning, would it be a lamp to our feet and a light to our path as we walk with you, as you talk with us, and as you guide us into all truth. We love you. It's your name we pray. Amen. Amen. You guys can grab a seat. Beautiful. I know some of you love worship. I promise we got more later. All right. But I'm excited to dive into this morning with y'all. If you don't know who I am, my name is Richie Christie. I'm our teaching pastor here. I've been absolutely loving this series that we've been in, and it was also the heart of the collab we did a few weekends ago. So if you haven't been with us, really the essence of this series has been that God's in everything, and we just need to wake up to it. We need to see him in it. And this quote has been stirring in me for a while now, but I think it embodies the heart of this series, and I just want to read it again. I read it at the collab, but it says, "You are the dwelling place of God. God is not out there, he's in you. All of us are a tabernacle of God, no degrees, all equal. Each of us, not just pastors or people on church staffs, each of us have been given the gift. The only difference, listen to this, the only difference is the degree of conscious revelation of this reality that each of us choose to walk in." Like, that's the heart of it. And so my hope and prayer this morning is that we would wake up to that God is in all things. He's involved in all things, and he's waking us up to see that we don't just have to wait to Sunday morning to meet him, which, praise God, we're going to. We already have. He's already here. He's probably already waking you up to his beauty and goodness and grace. But our prayer in this series is you would wake up to it in all things. And Derek ended last week telling us that one of those ways is by going for a walk. Anyone go for a walk this week? Yeah? Good. Great. So today I want to pick up where he left off, talking about some walks, some ordinary walks I've had that have become sacred. Some of you know my family. We've got 2 boys and a little girl we just had last December, Maeve. And, before Maeve was born, we decided we didn't want to find out the gender. All right, that was our contribution to making sure the environment didn't burn down around us with a gender reveal party. So we were like, let's wait to the buzzer beater, to the moment that she enters this earth side. Let's wait. And so what was funny is we did that with River, our firstborn, and there was an incredible kind of moment with that too, where we felt like God told us it was going to be a boy. And I don't say that lightly. Like, I was actually probably one of the more significant encounters I've had with the Lord in my life. And then with Abel too, even though we did find out that he was a boy, because we were, I don't know, number 2, you're like, man, that's a little anxiety inducing. Let's just find out this time. But similar experience in the naming thing. We had a friend pray, who prayed for us regularly, and after he was born, she showed us he was born in June. She showed us her journal entry in April, and she was praying for Christie baby, and she wrote Abel ? In April, and we didn't tell anyone the name. So that was really cool. And so heading into this third baby, we were like, all right, like it'll probably be similar, And so in the middle of it, we were like, we're not going to find out if it's a boy or a girl. And we landed on a boy name pretty quickly, and we could never land the plane on a girl name. And and so there were pieces of that journey where I was like, well, then it's obviously going to be a boy because God wouldn't stress us out that much. And so the time went on, and Jenna carried all our kids a week late. And so we had to schedule an induction. In the morning of the induction, I was, just feeling the weight of it all. So I just went for a run to that's a way I experienced the Lord. And on the run, I felt like the Lord just said, like, calm down and be present. And so my interpretation of that was, you have a boy name, it's going to be a boy. So I headed into that, told Jen, I came home, I was like, this is going to happen, all right? It's going to be a boy, see? Like, even that we all get the voice of the Lord wrong. You're just doing the best you can with what you've been given. And so we head into the moment, and the whole labor goes beautiful. And the moment comes, and the baby comes out, and I get to be there because everything was going so smoothly. I get to be the first one to hold this child and announce the gender. And immediately I go, no way, it's a girl. And I freaked out. I couldn't stop laughing. I started crying. The nurse was like, I wish we would have filmed that. That was so beautiful. And I'm sitting there going, we don't have a name. We don't know what this name is going to be. And we had a short list, but, we chucked that because we were like, it's going to be a boy. And I remember sitting there like overwhelmed with joy and just all of it, because your world gets flipped upside. I only knew how to be a boy or a dad to boys, and now I've got this girl, and all these thoughts are running through my mind. And then I was like, oh, we need to tell our families, but how do we tell them? Like, we don't have a name yet. And so I was like, hey, we'll call you in a bit. We're just enjoying that first hour or so. And so Jenna was like, just calm down. It's okay. Like, let's just like enjoy this first little bit, which is like, come on, man. Like, she just went through labor and she's calming you down. Like, get it together. And so we have that time, but then eventually I do what I always do when life feels a little hectic and I can't quite get clarity in my mind, is I go for a walk. Go for a walk to clear my mind. In fact, most weeks when I'm preparing a message, there's a portion in the week where I just go for a walk to just let the thoughts flow instead of sitting at a desk or a table or whatever. And I was like, all right, babe, you stay here because you can't get up. I'm going to go for a walk, and we'll both just pray about the names that we think we have, and we'll see when we come back. And so I went for this walk and walked around the Bristol Hospital for, I don't know, a half hour or so, and felt like got some clarity around it, and it was beautiful. We ended up landing on the name Maeve, which is an Irish origin name, which is, my family comes from there, and it means the cause of great joy, which was the exact response we had when she came into the world. And then the first part of her name, May, means beloved. The second part, Eve, means life. So we like to say she's our beloved life, who's the cause of great joy. But man, it flipped our world upside down. It really did. Any of you gone through something like that, you know that. But and life's kind of like that, right? It has a funny way of not exactly turning out how you envisioned, right? Anybody who's in anywhere past 20 years old probably has experienced that in some way, shape, or form. Life kind of just does that. And sometimes God has a funny way of showing up in ways that we don't expect or not that we anticipate. And so in those moments of life that you can't avoid because that's how it goes, what do you do? Like, how do you respond to moments like that? What do you do when life doesn't turn out exactly how you thought it would? When a situation doesn't meet your expectations? Sometimes it can be amazing news, like the story I just shared with Maeve. But I think this question might even be more important when that news isn't so good. Right? What do you do when you get bad news or heavy news or disappointing news or hard news or confusing news? What do you do when that news feels heavy and it feels like you don't really understand what God's doing in the midst of your life? You don't know how to make sense of it. Disappointment might consume you. Your heart is heavy. Maybe you're even angry that God didn't show up in the way you anticipated, and you're not sure how to put another foot in front of the other. What do you do in those moments? Those moments where your reality doesn't quite meet your expectations. Maybe you're like me, and when those moments come, you just kind of default to a walk. Because there's something about a walk, isn't there, that kind of clears your mind. There's something, Derek even alluded to that last week with just even the science behind it. But there is something about walks. And what's funny is I actually think when you think about the scriptures, when you think about the story of Jesus, all of the gospel encounters that we have where these miracle moments that we talk about, that they're probably sharing over in CF Kids right now, the stories of old, they're all kind of centered around this idea, though, that Jesus is walking to something or walking from something. Like, there's very few moments where, like, it's a normal religious service gathering and these miracles are taking place. It's actually a lot more ordinary if you view it through that lens, that he's heading to a meal, coming from a meal, he's sitting at a table, he's on a walk to this city, leaving that city, and these moments are just happening over and over and over again. Another way to put it maybe is in the ordinary rhythms of everyday life, like a walk, we find them becoming sacred moments where God meets us. This is the story of the Gospels. And there's a story in Luke 24, at the end of the Gospel of Luke, about two disciples who are on a walk. They're walking from Jerusalem to a town called Emmaus. So if you've got a Bible, you can flip to Luke 24. We'll be there all day. But we pick up this story, and it's after the scenes of Good Friday. It's actually the morning of the resurrection. They hear some rumors, but they are on a walk, and they too are walking in utter disappointment as we pick up this story. The reality has been flipped upside down. This man that they followed, that they anticipated would be the king of Israel, has been brutally killed. So in one sense, you have friends of his who are processing their friend being murdered. And they're just walking to the next town, because what else are you going to do in that moment? We read that some of the disciples stayed in Jerusalem, but these two decide to leave, and they're disappointed. They're heavy. They don't know how to make sense of what's going on. And so as we as a community are trying to walk in awareness of God in all things, let's read this together and see how this walk was just a walk until it wasn't. So verse 13. Luke 24, it says, that very day, two of them were going to a village named Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. And they were talking with each other about all these things that had happened. And while they were talking and discussing together, Jesus himself drew near and went with them. But their eyes were kept from recognizing him. We're going to read through the rest of the story here in a minute, but I don't know how many of you guys have ever heard of a pastor named Matt Chandler. I remember he put out a video years ago. I was going to play it, but it wasn't super relevant. But I'll never forget that video, because he talks about how there's like a scholarly understanding of to make sense of the resurrection, that maybe Jesus didn't rise from the dead, maybe after the crucifixion and the beating, that he just got up the third day, and that's why the story's here, because they found him on a walk. And Matt Chandler says this joke, and I'll never forget it, but he's like, have you ever stubbed your toe or sprained a foot and tried to walk 5 feet without your pelvis exploding out of your hips? You can't do it. And he's like, and so you're telling me that the theory that the resurrection isn't real is that he just was beaten beyond recognition, nailed to a cross, and then 3 days later he's just jaunting to Emmaus, 7 miles? No. So clearly they want us to know that this is the resurrected Jesus on a walk with two of his followers. But there's a lot of interesting details in this story. I can't get into all of it today. But one of the craziest lines in this whole story is the end of what I just read. It says, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. What does that even mean? That's weird. When the scriptures say something that make you go, that's weird, what does that mean? That's exactly what you should be asking, right? What is happening here? What do you mean their eyes were kept from recognizing him? Were they physically unable to see him? Was it their spiritual eyes? Did God blind them? We actually don't know. There's not an answer in the story, on purpose, I think. Because Luke, the writer of the gospel, is trying to get you to ask, what is happening right now? What is going on? And here's what I want you to know is when you stop and ask those questions, which you always should as you're reading, you might not land on a clear, concrete, single answer, but where you will land is you will discover more of who God is. I think sometimes we just get comfortable with reading through the scripture, and it's the story I've always heard. It's okay if you don't have all the answers. In fact, some of your discovery of God can only come through not having all the answers and asking questions. So, what's going on here? Why couldn't they see him? Why couldn't they see him? I'm sure there's tons of different answers, but one I want to propose today is maybe they couldn't see Jesus because the resurrected Jesus didn't quite meet their expectations. So their eyes were closed because he wasn't coming how they expected him to show up. I mean, they expected, right? They expected a conquering king that would overthrow the Roman Empire, Roman oppression, and establish their nation as the rightful heirs, that they would be fine, that they would be okay, that the oppression would stop. But instead, we have these guys who 2 days later, all their hope is in a guy like that, and what they have is just a friend who's been murdered. So their expectations of Jesus showing up on a walk with them, like he always showed up with them as they traveled from city to city and town to town, is not like that. They're not expecting him to come this way. And what's interesting is I think we do the same. I think sometimes God shows up, but we don't recognize him in our lives because we've already determined how he's supposed to look. So we can't see him. Sometimes God shows up in such ordinary moments that we just discount it as not God because it's too ordinary. It's not enough God-like. You know, God did come as a human for a reason. Maybe it's because he wants to reveal something that you don't quite expect about who God is, right? And so what if the reason we can't see what God is doing all the time is because we've already decided what he's supposed to do, what he's supposed to look like? So let's keep reading, verse 17. And he said to them, "What is this conversation that you are holding with each other as you walk?" Again, their eyes are closed. They don't recognize him. And they stood looking sad. And then one of them, named Cleopas, answered him. It's kind of a fun tidbit. So Orthodox tradition says that they claim that this is actually Jesus' uncle, Joseph's brother, who would have been in the upper room also in Acts 1 and 2. Just interesting thought there. So his own uncle is not recognizing him apparently, right? And it says, "Are you the only visitor in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened in these days?" And he said to them, "What things?" And they said to him, "Concerning Jesus of Nazareth, a man who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all people, and how our chief priests and rulers delivered him up to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the third day since these things have happened. Moreover, some of our women in our company amazed us. They were at the tomb early in the morning, and when they did not find his body, they came back saying that they had even seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but him they did not see. And he said to them, 'O foolish ones and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer these things and enter into glory?' And beginning with Moses and the prophets, he interpreted to them all the scriptures of the things concerning himself." There's a lot, again, in that chunk of the story, but let's start here at the beginning where it says they stood looking sad. These men are carrying weight. They're carrying grief. It even says in verse 21, when it's quoting them, it says, "But we had hoped. We had hoped that he'd be the one to redeem Israel. We had hoped." It's past tense. Their hope's gone. They had hoped. Now they have no hope. It's kind of grief language, honestly. They're grieving. Like, man, we had thought it would play out this way. We thought it would take place this way. And at another level, they're also telling the truth. Like they're confessing, they're telling the truth of what's really going on in their hearts and minds. And you got to imagine their state of being, again, just putting yourself back into their shoes. Like their friend is gone, their teacher, their rabbi is gone, and it's brutal. And now there's rumors of an angel showing up, and they haven't seen, like they don't know left from right now. This hope is gone. And you know, going back to the idea that maybe we can't see him because we've already decided what he's supposed to look like, I think sometimes our disappointment, or our disappointment even in God, is actually with a version of God we've created, but not him, not who he actually is. And think about it. Like, how many of us are walking through a "we had hoped" disappointment? Like, we had hoped a job would work out a certain way. We had hoped our marriage wouldn't be in this state. We had hoped our kids wouldn't be going through this situation. We had hoped this or that. We had hoped God might come through. We had hoped we get a different diagnosis. I mean, this is normal for people to walk through. Like, we had hoped. And so the question is what do you do when your hope becomes hopeless? What do you do when your hope is past tense? What do you do when Friday happened and Sunday still doesn't make sense? What do? There's something beautiful happening here, and I don't even think they know what they're doing, but I wish we would model it more. As they are voicing disappointment to the very one they're disappointed in. They're confessing, they're telling the truth. They're broken, they're done. They bring their dead hope to this risen Christ, even though they don't see him yet. Like, they're broken, they're lost. And how does that one, the risen one, respond? This is important. How does he respond to their disappointment, to their misunderstanding of God, to their questions of faith? What does he do? The world likes to tell us a lot about who God is and what he's like, and it misrepresents him at times. Truthfully, honestly, maybe bad church teaching does that more than the world. But when we're trying to understand what God is like, who he is like, what his character is like, do you know what needs to shape our view of who he is like and what he is like above everything else? The scriptures, the story. The story tells us what he is like. The Gospels, the literal life of Jesus, not ideas about him, but the actual story. So do you want to know how God reacts to your disappointment? How God reacts to your own faith crisis? How God reacts to your own questions? He walks with you. He listens to you. And he talks with you. And he meets you where you're at to get you to where he's leading you. This is what he always does. I had a friend this week, Bruce Gibson, send me a quote from an author. She says it this way: somewhere along the way, a lot of us were taught that questions in church meant that you lacked faith. You were being rebellious, or you should just sit down and be quiet and try harder. But let me say this as clearly as I can. Anything that tells you not to ask questions should make you ask more questions. Truth doesn't panic when you get curious. God isn't up in heaven going, please don't dig into that. I hope she doesn't notice that doesn't make sense. He is the one asking from the garden, who told you that? There are things many of us have believed about God that weren't actually him. They were handed down from our parents or poorly translated or explained. Many were rooted in fear or filtered through someone else's wounds. And we have built entire identities on them. We have built entire church systems on them. But what if God is not offended by your questions? What if he's actually using them to lead you back to his heart? That is so good. So good. In fact, I would go as far to say, until you are able to be honest with your own doubts, your own disappointments, your own faith struggles, your own questions, whatever it is, until you're able to be honest with those things, you will create a version of God that you can believe in, but not one you really want to follow because you don't trust him. And so we have to bring these things to him. And so in the heart of this series, if God is in all things, what if he is actually in your disappointments? What if he's actually in your questions? And as you say these things out loud and tell the truth, he shows up and he comes and walks with you just like he did them. They walked for 7 miles. I don't know about you, 7 miles is a long walk. I did some math, about 2.5 hours at a normal walking pace. That's a hike. We call that a hike around here, all right? And they talk for 2.5 hours, 7 miles. It says about all these things that had happened. Think about the depth here. Jesus is resurrected in bodily form, even though they don't see him. He knows all things. He holds all things together. He's the one that created the two guys with the questions and the road they're walking on and the sky above them. He knows absolutely everything. And how does he handle their doubts? He just lets them get it out. Say it. Say it. And guess what he says back? He doesn't just spew Bible answers at them to cut out their legs. No, it says this. It says, beginning with Moses and the prophets, he interpreted to them all the scriptures concerning themselves. Now, these were followers of a rabbi. They would have known the scriptures. They would have read them. So he actually meets them in their own context. He meets them in their context to teach them about the misunderstandings of God. Let me show you what's really going on here. Let me show you what's really happening here. You see, the problem for these men wasn't a lack of information. It was a lack of revelation. A misreading of the story gave them a misunderstanding of God. And Jesus meets them in their own story and says, let me reinterpret who I am. Let me show you who I am. And we cannot forget that this is what he does with us. He meets us where we're at, and he will guide you into truth with the truth that you can handle at the time to lead you to himself, to lead you to the truth. But sometimes we have already decided what he's like. We've already decided how he might show up. And he's kind of got to shake us out of some things to get us to think a little bit differently. And I told you about that walk at Bristol Hospital, but really the first time I kind of encountered this concept, I've shared this story before, so I won't take forever sharing it, but it was actually on another walk. So back when COVID happened, River had just been born, and so, new family, COVID, like everything about life was thrown upside down, right? Normally you just have a new baby and got to figure that out. Then they were like, COVID, have fun with that. And so things were super disorienting. Getting out of schedule, getting out of routine. I didn't realize how much I had created a routine of meeting with God in the morning, and how I know this might sound weird, but I almost like created an idol out of it. Like if it didn't happen, the rest of the day was gone and I couldn't walk with him well. But a newborn's gonna kind of bomb that whole concept on you, so you better figure it out quick. And I remember sitting in that season pretty frustrated with the Lord. To be honest, ministry was brutal during that time. Like, I'm looking down at some of these, like, it was just hard. Doing Zoom small groups with high school kids, no thank you. It was rough. Grace is laughing because she was in it. And I was just wrestling with the Lord and frustrated. And I remember one morning being like, I feel like I'm still trying to show up for you and you're not meeting me. Like, what is going on? And I will never forget this. I just had this sense where the Lord said, go take Izzo for a walk. Izzo's our dog. Go take Izzo for a walk. I was like, what? That's weird. Like, no, I'm trying to read the Bible and pray at my table like a good pastor. Get up and go for a walk. So I do that. And I felt like the Lord said, I don't want you to do this whole routine thing. Just take the dog for the walk and I'll meet with you there. I'll meet with you there. It was the sense I was getting. And in that season, it was unbelievably how the Lord just opened my mind to this whole idea that I had unknowingly created spaces in my life where God was present and he would speak. And then there were other places where I would just have to rely on this to get through this. I didn't realize that he was in all things. And so the Lord was like, I'm going to make you go on a walk with your golden retriever who chases every squirrel and picks up every stick. And I'm going to talk to you about it. And it was so simple, but absolutely earth-shattering to me that the Lord would meet me on a walk with my dog over and over and over again. But God had to shake me from my idea of how I think he should work and what I think he should do and get me out of my routine so that I could see him in a new light, could see him in a new way. But he met me on an ordinary walk, just like he met these men. But what's fascinating is these two guys are on this walk, but their eyes are still not open in this part of the story. After all this walking and talking and teaching, they still don't recognize him until we get to this point. Verse 28. It says, they drew near to a village to which they were going. And he acted as if they were going further. But he urged them strongly, saying, stay with us, for it is toward evening, and the day is now far spent. So he went to stay with them. And when he was at the table with them, he took bread and blessed it and broke it and gave it to them. And their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. And they said to each other, did not our hearts burn within us while he talked with us on the road, while he opened to us the scriptures? That is so beautiful. Do you know that sometimes you'll sense the Lord in your heart, in your mind? Maybe you would even describe it as a burning within you, and you can't quite make sense of everything, but then later you go, oh my gosh, that was you. Like, that was you, right? Because he's meeting you where you're at with what you can receive. And it says their hearts were burning And they rose from that same hour and returned to Jerusalem, saying, the Lord is risen indeed and has appeared to Simon. And they told what had happened on the road and how he was known to them in the breaking of the bread. This ending of the story is so powerful to me. It's so fascinating to me. There's so much in here. I would love to even, what is it? He vanished? What did that look like? That's crazy. We're always praying for people to get healed. I want to pray to vanish. That's cool. Just kidding. That was a joke, all right? All right. Okay, so the ending of the story, though, is crazy. They walked with him for miles. They talked for miles. And they don't see him. They listened to him teach. They still didn't see him. It's not until verse 30 when he was at the table with them. Another ordinary moment. They're just having dinner. On a walk, he's meeting him. At a table, he's meeting him. He took the bread and he blessed it and broke it and gave it to them. And then their eyes were open and they recognized him. Where do their eyes open? It's not at the temple. It's not when he's going through all the scriptures, through Moses and the prophets. It's not normal things that we would associate those things with. No, it's not in a dramatic moment. It is at a table. It is on a walk. It is in these ordinary moments that become sacred. What looks like a completely ordinary moment, when Jesus shows up and you see him, becomes pretty extraordinary. And Jesus seems to always be in the business of using these ordinary moments for those extraordinary encounters. There's also something interesting here, because they're sitting at this table and it says he took the bread and he broke it and blessed it. And I don't know, maybe they heard about the last time Jesus was eating a meal with some friends, right? Because that's the last time we would have heard of something like this, the Last Supper, that he took the bread and he broke it. And he was explaining these things. And I don't know, it's just fascinating to me, because I think he's even in that saying, man, you wanted a God with victorious power, but you're getting one who has a broken body. So you better adjust your expectations for what God's like, right? You want a dramatic encounter of resurrection and angels in a tomb, but these two guys, they don't get that. They get a walk and a meal, because that's what they always got with him. So of course he was going to show up like that again. That's how they would have known him. And guess what? That's how he still meets so many of us. But it's so ordinary sometimes we don't like to call it that. He doesn't come in spectacle, but in these ordinary sacred moments. And the end of the story tells us that one of these ordinary moments we get invited into that makes life extraordinary is the sharing of this communion meal. This broken body, this blood poured out for the new covenant. And so that's actually how we're going to end this morning. We're going to end this morning just like the story ends, at the communion table, of taking of his body and drinking of the blood of the new covenant. And we're going to come to this table and meet him, not because it's the only place that he's at, but there's something about, I grew up in a different tradition. I was forced to go to Catholic schools, kindergarten to 12th grade, and we would have Mass weekly, and there's different understandings of communion, and I get that. But even as a kid, I didn't understand all they were saying, but I remember there would be they would at least teach us, when you get it, just sit and reflect, and just take a moment. And that's what I want to invite you guys into this morning. Is to just you're going to come up here. We're going to have people up here. You'll be dismissed by Rose here in a few short moments. We've got gluten-free if you're that. But when you get it, I want you to just go back to your seat and just meet with him. And just be honest with him. Take the moment of reflection to do what these disciples did. They confessed their disappointments. They confessed their we had hoped moments that they're in. And allow the Lord to meet you in this meal like he's met thousands upon thousands. Logan's reading that Revelation verse. And the great cloud of witnesses throughout history have met the Lord in this meal. And as you're in that place, we've got a few questions that'll be up on the screen for you if you want them, or they're actually on your handout that you got this morning. But my hope and prayer more than anything is that you would be honest with your doubts, honest with your disappointments, and know that God is meeting you with them. And just pray this simple prayer. God, open my eyes. Open my eyes to see you. Open my eyes to see you in the circumstances I'm going through. Open my eyes to see you in the ordinary life that I'm living. Open my eyes. And maybe that's the prayer for really all we're getting at through this whole thing, and we just make it so much more complicated. God, open my eyes in these ordinary moments of every day to see you and meet with you, because that's how you have always met with us, is in the middle of our ordinary moments, making them these sacred places of encounter. And so I'm going to invite our communion team up. And so what'll happen is, you guys will be dismissed by Rose, and you can go grab that and just head back to your table. They'll dismiss you on the balconies as well. And again, I want you to just take this time to just let it be sacred space for you to encounter the Lord. So let me just pray over this meal. Jesus, thank you. Thank you for your broken body. Thank you for your blood poured out, for the forgiveness of sins. Thank you. Thank you for readjusting our interpretation of who God is and revealing what you're actually like. A God that meets us in the moments of our lives, a God that lays his life down for the salvation of many, a God that walks with us, a God that talks with us, a God that meets us where we're at. And so, Father, my prayer this morning is, as we take of this, as you invited us into on that Good Friday, that we would do it in remembrance of you, remembrance of the great mystery of your blood, the great mystery that isn't to not be known, but to be endlessly known at a depth that we can't even comprehend. So, Father, would you just meet us in this space? In Jesus' name.